Hi, it's Penny here, and today I wanted to check in on the 5-star predictions that I made last year, see how many I've read and whether they actually were 5-star reads. So last year I made 15 5-star predictions, and I will tell you I've read 11 of them. So I'm just going to talk through them. I did divide them into 3 categories. So the first category is standalone books. And honestly, this is probably the category that I had the least confidence in and also the least success in. So first on the list was The Memory Theatre by Karen Tidbeck. Karen Tidbeck wrote Amatka, which was a 5-star read for me. So I was really hopeful that The Memory Theatre would be the same. And the setup was that it was like kind of an Alice in Wonderland retelling, but kind of weirder and darker. We were following these young people in this world that's kind of like the Red Queen's like court, just all these adults having parties and the young people have to serve them. And unfortunately, when they stop being children anymore, they are tortured and killed. So these young people really want to escape. And it turns out there is kind of a way for them to travel to our world. And in the beginning, I was really loving the fairy tale vibes and the weirdness of it all. And it seemed like it was going to have some twisty time stuff going on. All the adults in this like party world don't really remember anything day to day. And it almost seems like they're experiencing the days in a different order. And there is also a part to the story where these characters get into the real world, or one of them gets into our world, and they're so vicious and just kill people at the drop of a hat. And I kind of really liked that as well. But in the end, I really struggled to get invested in this story because I couldn't tell what it was about. It seemed like the kind of book that was going to have some kind of like deep metaphorical meaning. But from what I can tell online, the author has said there is no metaphor. It's just a story. And that's very disappointing because it meant there was nothing for me to get out of the story. At times, it was doing weird things that were interesting, but it never really added up to anything with any depth, and so then it felt just kind of empty and pointless. So I enjoyed some parts of the vibes. I gave it 3 stars, but not the 5-star read that I was hoping for. Then we have The Dream Daughter by Diane Chamberlain. This is one that I picked up mainly for the time travel elements, and also a lot of people had said that it was their favorite book. So I was hopeful. I guess I was also a tiny bit hesitant because it was more of a contemporary or almost a historical fiction in some ways. So basically there is this woman in the 40s, I guess, because her husband has gone off to war. Then she discovers that she's pregnant, but the doctors say that her unborn child has this medical problem that they have no treatment for. As it turns out, though, her brother-in-law says, in the future, there is a treatment and I have a way for you to go into the future. So I guess that begins a bit of a journey. As you can guess, given that we're talking about young children with illnesses and that kind of thing, it is very like emotionally traumatic, and I did really like it. There was a little bit of time travel twistiness, although probably not enough for me. And like a significant part of the book was also this woman going through like a really awful experience with her young child being ill, and that was like very tense and emotional, and kind of I didn't like it. Like I like it when books make me feel emotional, but perhaps not when it's related to that topic. Just a little bit too stressful for me. Hence why I never had any children, and I won't be. I do also think the ending was a little bit unsatisfying in that it didn't entirely make sense why certain characters wouldn't have made the effort to find each other earlier in time. Anyway, I gave it 4 stars. It was still a really good emotional read. I think if you like those kind of emotional reads and don't mind reading about traumatic pregnancies, then this could be something you'd really like. I know a lot of people really do. For me, it was just a 4-star though, but still a really good read. Okay, then, this next one is going to be a really unpopular opinion, but my 5-star prediction was The Sword of Kaigan by M.L. Wang, because so many people rave about this. I thought it's going to be great. So we are following this mother who lives in this kind of like remote village where all the men are warriors. Now it turns out that this woman also has some skill with the sword, but because of the culture, she's not allowed to use that, and she kind of keeps her past as some kind of like superhero vigilante, kind of keeps that secret and completely out of her now life as a mother. But then as her son kind of starts to learn some things about the outside world, she has to decide how she's going to deal with that when talking to him. I think about halfway through, something dramatic happens, which completely changes the direction of the book. And from that, like leading up to that, I thought a lot of good plot pieces were being laid. It seemed like the politics of the world was going to be very interesting, but we didn't really do anything with that. In my opinion, felt a lot like the author had just daydreamed about different scenes in her head and decided to write those scenes out, but the whole like plot kind of lost any kind of cohesion, and I didn't feel like the characters' development was very satisfactory. It felt like a lot of the stuff that was set up in the first half was just dropped on the floor and nothing was done with it, and I just don't really get it. I thought the pacing was not great. Like, I think there was some potential there, and I don't think anything was done with it. Now, obviously, lots of people love this book, so honestly, I don't understand it. So I only gave this 3 stars, bit of a fail. Then we have Witch King by Martha Wells. So I also have on this list a bit later the Murderbot Diaries by Martha Wells, and I guess spoilers, I really love that one. But I picked up Witch King first, and I think I still expected it to have a similar tone because I had read the first chapter of Murderbot previously to picking up Witch King. But it's quite different from the Murderbot series. It's more of a typical, not really, but kind of more of a typical fantasy story. The setup is interesting though. We're following this man who wakes up, and it turns out he is a demon, and he basically can take over the bodies of different people, and he wakes up in a body that isn't the body he had previously, and he doesn't know why, and he kind of has to work out who killed his previous body and try and track them down. So that is an interesting setup, but the way the story was told was through multiple timelines. We're kind of getting him trying to track down who killed his body. And he has some very strong suspicions right from the start. Like, he thinks that he was betrayed because that's the only way it could have happened. And then we're also kind of getting his backstory of how he came into the world and the people he used to live with, and kind of this other group of people that came in and were at war with his people, and kind of where that went. I think I started this, I can't remember if it was on ebook or audiobook, but either way, I think I read about half of it, and then maybe my library book returned itself or something, or I just wasn't paying attention, so I decided to change to the other format. Maybe I changed to ebook, and then I also decided to start from the start again, and that worked much better. And I actually think the problem with this book is that when you're getting the backstory, you're getting to know these characters and learning to care about them, but because you don't get that, or at least you're only getting little bits of that throughout the story, it's not until like past halfway that you actually care about the characters. So everything that's been happening in the future timeline until then, it's hard to be invested in it. And I do think if this book had been structured completely differently, I would have had a very different experience with it. But as it was, I gave this 3 stars. I think it just didn't quite pull off what it was trying to pull off, even though it had a lot of really cool concepts. Okay, so far, no 5 stars, but finally, we did get one 5-star book, and that is The Last Murder at the End of the World by Stuart Turton. So I had previously read The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, as well as The Devil and the Dark Water. I really like The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, not so much The Devil and the Dark Water. And to be honest, The Last Murder at the End of the World is quite different from either of those, but still the same kind of like murder mystery that you're trying to solve. In this case, it's in this kind of post-apocalyptic world, so this fog has spread across the earth, and now the only survivors are these people on this island who are led by these three scientists who existed from before the apocalypse, but everyone else on the island was born after the apocalypse. And they can't leave the island because as soon as you go out into the fog, it will eat you. But there's also a lot of really weird things on the island. The key one of those is that there is this AI managing the island, and this AI is able to like read everybody's thoughts. So the story is actually told from the perspective of the AI, but each chapter is kind of from the perspective of a different person on the island, but it's the AI reading their thoughts. And every now and then the AI will put like little asides into the narration that kind of lets you know that the AI knows more about what's really going on. And I've actually seen a lot of people haven't given this one good reviews, which is the opposite of all the other books so far. All those ones, other people gave them great reviews, and I thought, this one, everyone else thought it wasn't that great, but I really loved it. I was just constantly intrigued about the different mysteries that were being introduced and revealed. Like, there were constant reveals that would always create new questions. There was a fair amount of like thrill about what was going to happen to these different characters and like dangerous situations, or like that situation where one person learns one thing and you know the effect that it's going to have on another person, and so like you can't wait to get back to that person and see what's going to happen next. And honestly, I just had a really great time with this. Like, 5 stars, one of my best books of the year. So of the standalones that I thought were going to be 5 stars, we had 3 3-stars, 1 4-star, and 1 5-star. That is not that great. But I did do better with the next category, which was basically series that I wanted to start. So firstly, we had The Book That Wouldn't Burn by Mark Lawrence. I have actually now read the first book and the second book in that series. And this one I gave 4 stars. I feel like it had so much potential and there were so many really great elements that I loved, but it didn't quite deliver on that potential. And so like, if it had, it would have been 5 stars. Without it, still a very solid 4-star, especially the first book. I think I found a little bit more negative with the second book, but the first book is so great. We have this girl called Levira, I think, who lives out in the desert and has big dreams of going to the city. She does end up making it to the city, although not through the way that she wanted to. And when she's there, she's learning a lot about the world as well as about this library. We're also following this other character, which is this guy who has lived his whole life in the library with his siblings. Basically, they're stuck in one chamber of the library and they can't leave. Like, they can't open any of the doors, so they're just stuck living in the library. And they have these like automaton robot type creatures looking after them, the librarian and the soldier. And so kind of the whole thing with this library is that it is so expansive and it's existed before like current civilization. And it has kind of this magic to it that's almost technology. Like, it's never clear where the line is between technology and magic in this library, and I really love that. And any time when we were exploring the library, I was completely invested. Sometimes other than that, it kind of lost its way, I think, and the characters' motivations weren't clear. Oh, but as well, near the end, it kind of brings things together in a really clever way that kind of is what brought it up to a 4-star for me. And like, if it had fixed a few of the other things I didn't like, it definitely would have been a 5-star. Like, I love the themes as well that it was exploring to do with like the cycle of civilization and the way that we bring destruction down upon ourselves. And I guess a fair amount of racism, depending how you look at it. Maybe it's speciesism. Anyway, I wish this could have been a 5-star. It almost was, but it was still 4 stars, pretty good. Then, as I mentioned before, we have The Murderbot Diaries by Martha Wells. So I read All Systems Red, and this is following Murderbot, who is this security bot who's like half bot with some human components, and their job is basically to perform security for these humans. They are constantly frustrated that these humans put themselves in danger and make really stupid decisions. And they've actually hacked their governor module. So there's this governor module that will cause them a lot of pain if they don't do what they're supposed to do. But Murderbot has hacked their governor module so that they can just make their own decisions, but mainly so that they can just watch a lot of TV, because that's all they really want to do. They do, unfortunately, have to do their job, and they are pretty good at their job, but also constantly frustrated about it. So in a lot of ways, Murderbot is incredibly relatable. I think a lot of us would like to just watch TV, and also Murderbot doesn't really like talking to other people, interacting with humans, especially if it has to do with emotions. And they're constantly frustrated about their job, even though they do kind of take a little bit of pride in what they do and how important it is. And like, you can feel throughout it that they do have kind of this driving need to protect the humans around them. So I think the key things that I love about Murderbot is the tone of the writing, just that like sarcastic, frustrated, don't give a shit, but kind of I do a lot kind of feeling that's so relatable. And the other thing I really love about it is the way that it looks at artificial intelligence, especially further on in the series, and how it kind of looks at human emotion by having these bots experience it in a very human but non-human way. Honestly, a great series that I've now caught up on, and so I'm waiting for more books to come out, which there are supposed to be more, so hopefully they won't take too long. Then we have Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. So I really wanted to like this because Tamsin Muir is a New Zealand author, and I'm from New Zealand, so I like supporting New Zealand authors. But also, I had heard that this was super weird and that it involved necromancy, and I like both those things. I definitely got all the weirdness I wanted. So basically, we're following this woman named Gideon who lives on this planet, which is the 9th house, and she really wants to leave the planet, go somewhere else, because it's a very kind of depressing place to live. So she makes a deal with the head of the house that if she goes and kind of acts as security for this head of the house in this competition, that she will then gain her freedom. Now, at this competition, we have representatives from all the different houses competing for something. All the heads of houses are necromancers, and they're kind of geeking out over this necromancer lore. It takes quite a long time for you to really work out what's going on in the competition. And as well, people start being murdered. So then there's kind of a murder mystery that you're trying to solve as well. It is often written in a very strange way, and I don't think until you read it that you can really understand what people are saying when they say it's hard to follow what's going on. But I kind of liked the experience of working out what's going on. And I also really liked a lot of the descriptions, the way the sentences would start out in a way where you thought you knew where they were going, and then they would just go off in a completely different direction. I loved it. The writing was so creative, the characters were so interesting, and the whole way the necromancy worked as well seemed so different. And I've heard the books only get weirder, so I'm super excited about that. So 5 stars, Gideon the 9th is great. You should read it. Next on the list, I had Infinity Gate by Emma Carey, so I didn't get to that one, and I will move that onto my 5-star prediction list for next year. But I did get to Clean Sweep by Alona Andrews. So this is the first book in the Innkeeper Chronicles by Alona Andrews. We're primarily following this woman named Dina, who is an innkeeper. So in this world, all the supernatural creatures that we normally know about are actually aliens, and it just happens that Earth is kind of in the middle of this transportation hub, and so it's very convenient for these aliens to be able to stay on Earth while they're traveling through. And so there's a treaty in place which basically means that aliens can stay at these inns as long as kind of they keep themselves secret from the rest of humanity, and it's the innkeeper's jobs to kind of keep the aliens under control. So this is kind of a paranormal romance. There is also a love interest that we're slowly building this relationship with. As well, there's a bigger mystery where Dina's parents are missing and we're trying to find out what happened to them, and that is very slowly being revealed. I think I just read book 5, and we've learned some things, but there's still definitely more story to come. I think another book or 2. But like all of Alona Andrews' books, I think they write characters so well. The way they do romance is a way that I really enjoy, where characters start out somewhat antagonistic, and then as they work together they form a partnership and come to trust each other. These books also always have really clever like magic and politics, and there's also a fair amount of action that keeps the story moving. There's like constant momentum, and as well I just really like the humor in these books. Like I feel like it's a very relatable humor, kind of snarky, not too over the top or ridiculous, and I just had a really fun time with this series. So I did give the first book 5 stars. So that means from my second category of series I was starting, I got 3 5 stars, 1 where I didn't read it, and then 1 where I gave it 4 stars. I think that is pretty good progress. Like a 60% success rate for 5-star predictions seems pretty good. Oh, actually it's 75% if you take out the one that I didn't even read. Anyway, then the next category I had was 5 books where I actually own books in this series. So firstly, we have Ancillary Justice by Anne Leckie. So this is such a strange one. We are following the Justice of Torrin, who used to be a spaceship, an AI spaceship who also inhabited like multiple bodies. So we're getting one timeline where they're involved in like this growing empire, the colonization of the universe, and some things that are going wrong there. And then we're also getting a future timeline, like 2,000 years in the future, where they now only exist in one body and they're trying to get revenge for whatever happened there. So we're learning what happened as well as trying to get revenge. And I love this so much, that perspective of someone who used to be multiple people Or even like when you're getting the past timeline, that experience of them being multiple people was written so well. And also just the way that it built out this very alien culture and the whole concept of how they view civilization. It was so great. So many scenes in this book were super intense and it just blew me away so many times. I will admit, it was definitely a bit of a brain strain at times, so I wouldn't go into this without being like mentally prepared, but I really love this. Like, this is definitely going to be one of the best books that I read this year, and it was a definite 5-star book. Let's put it over there. Then we have Shaman's Crossing by Robin Hobb. So I don't actually own the first book in this series, just the second and the third books, and I did actually listen to the series on audiobook, but I really loved it. This is a trilogy that has a much lower average rating than the rest of like the Realm of the Elderlings by Robin Hobb. And I mean, if that's what other people think, that's fine. But for me, I thought it was just as good as the Realm of the Elderlings. I'm losing my voice. So we're following this young boy named Navarre, and it's kind of set in an alternate colonial America. So Navarre's people are the colonizers who have come in, and Navarre is the soldier son. So in this world, the second son is always a soldier, and he is the son of a soldier. However, because of some politics that went on, his father has been raised to a noble, and throughout the series there's a lot looking at like the old nobles versus the new nobles, as well as of course we have the native people of this land. So there are actually two that were already at war between themselves that have different kinds of magic, and Navarre himself ends up getting involved in the magic of this world in quite tragic ways. Like by the third book, his life is completely destroyed. If you think Robin Hobb was harsh to Fitz in the Realm of the Elderlings, she's pretty awful to Navarre as well. And there are definitely a lot of trigger warnings for this series. I did do a separate series review for this, so I will link that if you want to know more about it. But I just felt so emotional through this whole series. I loved my reading experience. I loved the way that it used the magic to explore some of the themes, especially like colonization and like a lack of control in the world. It's hard to talk about without spoilers, but I really love the series and I gave the first book 5 stars. Definitely great. Oh, and that's actually all the books I'm going to talk about in this video, because the other 3 books in this category I didn't get to, so I'll have to get to them next year. So that's The Shadow of the Wind, A Declaration of the Rights of Magicians, and The Grace of Kings. So all of these I'll talk about more in my next 5-star prediction video that I think will be up later in the week. So overall, from the 11 5-star predictions that I made and actually read, 55% of them were 5-star books. I think that's pretty good, and definitely some of the books on this list are new favorites that I will love for a long time. Unfortunately, 27% of them were only 3 stars, but I guess I should be glad that none of them were 1 or 2 stars, because that would have been very disappointing. Anyway, if you have read any of the books that I talked about in this video, I would love to chat with you about them down in the comments, or let me know if you've read any 5-star predictions lately and whether they worked out for you. Do subscribe if you'd like to see more of my bookish videos. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you are doing well, and I will see you next time.